But yeah, we were there to try to do the right thing. And you know, the other thing is, we didn't say, hey, let's pick out Somalia as a great place to go hang out.
Yeah,
the president at the time, President Clinton, said, this is where we're going, this is what the mission is, and our commander said, roger that, we can do it. And we all had signed on the line. That's why we serve. And you can make a difference when you go to those countries.
Does it strike you as odd that, and I don't want to pick on Ilhan Omar, but she's a member of Congress, and so her statements get a lot of attention. Here's someone who was brought to the United States at public expense simply because we're a kind country that accepts a lot of refugees. And rather than being grateful for that, she spent the rest of her life attacking this country.
In this powerful segment, a respected Islamic leader and U.S. veteran takes aim at Congresswoman Ilhan Omar for her controversial remarks about the Battle of Mogadishu and her history of anti-Semitic statements. The video dives into Omar's past comments, her criticism of American soldiers, and allegations of marriage and immigration fraud that have followed her for years. From the streets of Somalia to the halls of Congress, this confrontation exposes the hypocrisy, ingratitude, and political double standards surrounding Omar's career. Watch as a Muslim veteran who served on the ground in Mogadishu calls her out for disrespecting the very country that gave her refuge and for turning her back on the truth. Backhand Index Pointing Right subscribe to the screen for more hard-hitting political analysis, fact-driven exposés, and bold commentary on America's most controversial figures.
In the early 1990s, the East African country of Somalia was rocked by civil war and subsequent famine. The U.S. sent troops there not to conquer land or steal resources, but purely to save lives. And we did that. We saved about 100,000 Somalis. That, by the way, was 1993, not 1992. I misremembered it. Seems like just yesterday. But Somali-American Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is not grateful for what the U.S. did on behalf of the country she was born in. No, she thinks American troops were the bad guys in that conflict. A couple of years ago, she responded on Twitter to a user who was remembering the 19 American troops killed during the Battle of Mogadishu. She wrote this, quote, "In his selective memory, he forgets to also mention the thousands of Somalis killed by American forces that day, exclamation point. Hashtag not today, Satan." Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb fought that day in the Battle of Mogadishu. He's the author of the book Leadership in the Shadows, and we're happy to have him tonight. Thanks very much for coming on tonight.
Thanks
Sergeant
for having
Major Lamb.
me.
When you read Ilhan Omar's remarks about the battle that you fought in, what's your response?
Well, normally it's humorous, but at this point it's kind of disturbing because, I mean, first of all, she wasn't there. She'd already left the country. We were there, and I've never heard numbers quite that inflated. I mean, we wished we could have done that much damage, but that didn't happen as far as I know.
Well, I guess what's so striking is, and the U.S. has done things I disagree with around the world, but in this case, it seemed like the mission was purely altruistic. We were only there to help. We didn't take Somalia. I mean, did you steal gold or natural resources when you were there?
No, we didn't do that. We were trying to take out Adid because he was a clan leader that had, the Habagetter clan had kind of taken over the town. They were taking the food, any of the aid that we were giving to Somalia, also weapons, and they're running drugs. Khat is a big drug over there. And he needed to be eliminated so that we could get peace back in that town. So we were actually there to help some of the lesser tribes or the lesser clans, such as her clan, which, you know, obviously they were already gone. But, yeah, we were there to try to do the right thing. And you know, the other thing is, we didn't say, hey, let's pick out Somalia as a great place to go hang out.
Yeah,
the president at the time, President Clinton, said, this is where we're going, this is what the mission is, and our commander said, roger that, we can do it. And we all had signed on the line. That's why we serve. And you can make a difference when you go to those countries.
Does it strike you as odd that, and I don't want to pick on Ilhan Omar, but she's a member of Congress, and so her statements get a lot of attention. Here's someone who was brought to the United States at public expense simply because we're a kind country that accepts a lot of refugees. And rather than being grateful for that, she spent the rest of her life attacking this country. Why?
Well, as they would say down here in Tennessee, bless her heart. I mean, we want her to understand that she's living large now because of her family being able to escape the atrocities of Mogadishu. And yeah, it's very disturbing. We watched our friends get dragged through the streets by the people that she says are her people. And we got to watch that on TV once we'd exfilled from the crash site that I was at, and we got back to our hangar. That's what we got to watch. So, yeah, we take it personal when you attack us like that. Once again, it's not surprising to hear that. There's been kind of a long list of things she said that I don't know if she meant them or not, but she continues to say them. So, yeah, I feel bad for her.
Yeah, I do too. What about the families of the Americans who were killed there? I mean, what do you think they think of this?
I haven't talked to any of the families, but that doesn't take her saying something to remind them of what they deal with every day.
Right.
Whenever they go to a baseball game and they hear the national anthem and they look at the flag, that dad's not there with his kids.
Yeah.
That's a story that not just from Somalia, but all the other conflicts that I've been in and that I haven't been in. That's the story of the soldiers. So that's what we deal with on a daily basis. And really, you know, we just want people to help us out when we get back, which is we need a mission. We need, you know, guys to get help if they have drug or alcohol issues, which sometimes can be prevalent in the military if guys are suffering with injuries that they try to continue to fight with. So we try to get them the help that we can. That's what we want to do. And yeah, it's the soldier story from the last 10,000 years.
Kind of the last thing you need is a lecture from people like her. Sergeant Major, thank you very much.
Minnesota Democrats, media, and the Department of Justice have continually ignored strong evidence supporting the fact that Ilhan Omar may be directly involved in tax, marriage, and immigration fraud.
In 2002, Omar married Ahmed Hirsi in a religious ceremony. Hirsi is the father of Omar's 3 children and is pictured often with Omar and their children on their campaign website.
In 2016, Minnesota journalist Scott Johnson received a tip about a post from a Somali community website containing marriage certificates alleging Omar married her brother Elmi in February 2009 in order for him to immigrate to the U.S. legally, despite the facts she'd been married to the father of her children, Hirsi, over a decade.
This clearly proved that any such second marriage might be bigamous under Minnesota law as well as fraudulent.
Later in August 2016, further investigations into legal documents and filings in Minnesota by journalist Priya Samsundar uncovered evidence supporting the allegation that Ilhan Omar married her brother, Ahmed Nursed Elmi, in 2009.
The 2009 marriage license to Elmi lists the same address as one filed for a Minnesota business 3 months later in May 2009 for a one-to-one cafe by Hirsi, the father of Omar's 3 children.
That means Ilhan Omar was living with both her real husband Hirsi while still married to her brother Elmi.
Omar has continued to deny the allegations, dismissing them as baseless rumors and fake journalists on bigot blogs despite mounting evidence.
High school record evidence also support the claim that Elmi is indeed her brother and graduated in 2003 from Arlington Senior High School in St. Paul, Minnesota, with enrollment records that state he was born April 4th, 1985. The same birth date listed on Omar's 2009 marriage certificate to Elmi.
As troubling details mounted against Omar, members of the Somali community were threatened into silence through intimidation tactics and physical violence on themselves and their families still back in Somalia. In an obtained Facebook Live video from August 18, 2016, a woman identified as the Associate Chair of the Somali American Caucus speaks. And in translation, she states in plain terms that any Somali that talks about Omar's personal life, including marriage discrepancies, is an enemy of the Somali community. Credible sources in the Somali community have stepped forward and provided Alpha News with information in exchange for anonymity, along with members of the 2003 class have also identified Elmi's father as
ChatGPT said, in the early 1990s, Somalia was torn apart by civil war and famine. The United States stepped in, not to conquer or take resources, but to save lives. American troops helped deliver aid and restore order, saving an estimated 100,000 Somalis from starvation and violence. But despite that sacrifice, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who was born in Somalia, has repeatedly criticized the U.S. military's actions during that time, painting American soldiers as villains rather than heroes. When a social media user honored the 19 U.S. soldiers killed in the 1993 Battle of Mogadishu, Omar responded by accusing American forces of killing thousands of Somalis, adding the phrase, "Not today, Satan." Those words struck a nerve with many veterans who fought on the ground that day, including Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb, who risked his life during the mission. Lamb says Omar's comments aren't just false, they're deeply offensive. He points out that Omar wasn't even in Somalia during the battle, and that her claims of thousands of Somali deaths are wildly exaggerated. He insists that the U.S. mission was purely humanitarian, aimed at taking down warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid, who was hoarding aid, running drugs, and terrorizing civilians. American forces, Lamb says, were there to help the Somali people, not harm them. He reminds viewers that U.S. soldiers didn't choose Somalia as a battlefield. They were sent there by their commanders and by the president to fulfill a mission of mercy. Many never came home. Lamb and others watched as the bodies of their friends were dragged through the streets on live television. For him, hearing a sitting member of Congress, who was rescued from that same chaos, disparage the country that gave her refuge is a personal insult. He argues that Omar should show gratitude to the United States for giving her family's safety and opportunity instead of constantly attacking the nation that made her rise possible. Lamb says that for the families of the soldiers who died in Mogadishu, every flag, every national anthem, and every empty seat at a ball game is a reminder of their loss. He also calls for better support for veterans who return home with trauma, addiction, or injuries, saying that their service shouldn't be repaid with disrespect or neglect. The video then turns to the long-standing controversies surrounding Ilhan Omar's personal history. Reports and documents suggest that Omar may have been involved in tax, marriage, and immigration fraud, specifically allegations that she married her brother, Ahmed Nursed Elmi, to help him immigrate to the U.S. legally while already married to the father of her children. Evidence from Minnesota public records and community sources has raised serious questions about the validity of her marriages and filings. Meanwhile, members of the Somali community have reportedly faced threats and intimidation for speaking out about these discrepancies, with some even facing physical danger for telling the truth. Despite growing evidence, Omar has dismissed all allegations as baseless attacks and bigoted conspiracies. But to many observers, the pattern of deflection, dishonesty, and hostility toward America paints a troubling picture. For Sergeant Major Kyle Lamb and countless veterans who served honorably, Omar's words and actions are not only wrong, they're a betrayal of the very freedom she enjoys today.